I should have listened to the warnings about Dead Man's Cove. I should have turned back when the fog grew thick and the water went silent. But I was desperate, so I used ham as bait. What I pulled from those forbidden waters had claws that could shred steel and eyes that held impossible intelligence. The entire village swore this species was extinct 300 years ago. They were wrong, and now they're rising from the depths surrounding my boat. If you want to know what happened next, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop in the comments where you're watching from right now. I should have known better than to fish in Dead Man's Cove. My name is Marcus Webb, and I've been fishing these waters off the coast of Greystone Village for 32 years. I know every rock, every current, every secret that the sea whispers to those patient enough to listen. But desperation makes fools of even the most experienced fishermen. The nets had been coming up empty for 3 weeks straight. Not just mine, every boat in the village. The cod had vanished, the mackerel had disappeared, and even the crabs seemed to have abandoned our shores. Old-timers muttered about curses and ancient debts, but I knew better, or at least I thought I did. It was my daughter Emma's 12th birthday in 2 days, and I'd promised her a feast. A promise is a promise, especially to a little girl who'd already lost her mother to the cancer that ravaged our village 2 years prior. I couldn't fail her. Not again. That's why I found myself loading my skiff with supplies at 4 in the morning, the fog so thick I could barely see my own hands. My neighbor, old Samuel Crow, emerged from the mist like a ghost. "You're not thinking of going to the cove, are you, Marcus?" His weathered face was creased with concern, his one good eye fixed on my boat. "Got no choice, Sam. The fish aren't biting anywhere else." "There's always a choice." He grabbed my arm with surprising strength for a man of 76. "That place has been forbidden since before my grandfather's time. There are things in those waters that don't take kindly to visitors." I gently freed my arm. "Just superstition, old friend. Probably why the fish gather there. Nobody bothers them." Samuel's expression darkened. "It ain't superstition when 3 men don't come back. When boats are found with claw marks gouged into the wood, when—" He stopped, his jaw working as if fighting against speaking the next words. "When you hear sounds from the deep that no fish ever made." "I'll be careful," I promised, though his words had planted seeds of doubt in my mind. As I pushed off from the dock, Samuel called out one last warning. "If you catch something strange, Marcus, anything at all, throw it back. Don't bring it to shore. Some doors are better left closed." The fog swallowed his figure, and I was alone with the rhythmic splash of my oars cutting through the dark water. Dead Man's Cove earned its name honestly. The entrance was guarded by jagged rocks that had claimed more than a dozen vessels over the centuries. But I knew the secret passage, a narrow channel visible only at certain tides. The journey took an hour, and with every stroke the air grew colder, heavier, as if the atmosphere itself warned me to turn back. When I finally entered the cove, the sight took my breath away. The water was impossibly clear, revealing depths that seemed to go down forever. Schools of fish, cod, bass, even species I'd never seen before, glided through underwater forests of kelp. It was a fisherman's paradise, untouched and abundant, but something felt wrong. The silence was absolute. No seabirds cried overhead. No waves lapped against the rocks. Even my breathing seemed muted, absorbed by some invisible force. And beneath the boat, in those crystal-clear depths, I could swear I saw movement. Something large, something deliberate, circling in the darkness below. I told myself it was just a shark or a seal, nothing more. I set up my lines with practiced efficiency, using my usual bait. Salted mackerel, synthetic, lures, even some fresh clams I'd bought from the market. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, burning away the fog. Yet not a single fish took my bait. It made no sense. They were everywhere, swimming past my hooks with complete indifference, as if they couldn't see the food dangling right in front of them. By noon, frustration had given way to desperation. I rifled through my supplies, looking for anything different, anything that might attract their attention. That's when I found it. A ham. Sandwich my daughter had packed for my lunch, wrapped in wax paper with a note. "Come home safe, Daddy. I love you." The sandwich had seemed excessive when she'd made it. Thick slices of honey-glazed ham, aged cheddar, her homemade mustard. But Emma always thought her old man needed more meat on his bones. A crazy idea struck me. Why not? Nothing else had worked. I cut a chunk of the ham, threaded it onto my largest hook, and cast the line into the depths. The pink meat spiraled down, 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 disappearing into the shadows below. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the water exploded. The strike hit my line with such force that I nearly went overboard. The rod bent double, the reel screaming as line peeled off at an impossible rate. Whatever I'd hooked was massive, powerful, and diving deep. I braced my feet against the side of the skiff, every muscle straining as I fought to keep the rod from being torn from my hands. This was no ordinary fish. In 3 decades of fishing, I'd never felt anything like this. The sheer strength, the intelligence in how it fought, alternating between powerful runs and sudden direction changes that nearly capsized my small boat. Sweat poured down my face despite the cold. My arms burned with fatigue. Several times I considered cutting the line, but something, pride, curiosity, or perhaps something darker, kept me fighting. The battle lasted over an hour. Slowly, painfully, I gained line. Whatever creature I'd hooked was tiring, or perhaps it had decided to face me. Either way, it was rising from the depths. The water around my boat began to change color, darkening from crystal blue to an oily black. The temperature dropped so sharply that my breath misted in the air. And then I saw it. At first, I thought it was a mass of kelp or seaweed breaking the surface, but kelp doesn't have eyes. Kelp doesn't have claws. The creature that emerged from the depths defied everything I thought I knew about the ocean. It was roughly the size of a large seal, but that's where any resemblance to familiar marine life ended. Its body was covered in overlapping scales that shimmered with an iridescent sheen, shifting between deep purple and midnight blue. But it was the limbs that made my blood run cold. Instead of flippers, it had 4 powerful appendages that ended in hands, if you could call them that. Each one bore 4 fingers tipped with curved, razor-sharp claws that looked capable of tearing through steel. The claws were bone-white. Against the dark scales, clicking together as the creature thrashed in the water. Its head was elongated, almost reptilian, with a mouth full of needle-like teeth. But the eyes, God, the eyes were the worst part. They were large, almost human in their placement and proportion, and they held an intelligence that no fish should possess. They fixed on me with an intensity that felt like judgment. The creature made a sound then, something between a hiss and a groan, and I heard in it something that sounded disturbingly like speech, syllables, rhythm, meaning just beyond my comprehension. My hand shook as I struggled to bring it alongside the boat. Every instinct screamed at me to cut the line, to let it sink back into whatever abyssal nightmare it had come from. But I was transfixed, horrified, and fascinated in equal measure. Using my landing net, which suddenly seemed woefully inadequate, I managed to haul the creature into my boat. It landed with a wet thud, immediately thrashing with terrifying strength. One of those clawed hands caught my arm, tearing through my jacket and drawing blood. The pain was sharp, immediate, but it was the cold that followed. An unnatural, bone-deep chill that spread from the wound that made me cry out. I grabbed my club, the one I used for dispatching large fish, and brought it down on the creature's head. Once, twice, 3 times. It finally went still, though those intelligent eyes remained open, staring at me with what I could only describe as accusation. Breathing hard, I examined my catch in the light of day. This was no known species. This was something that shouldn't exist, something that belonged in ancient legends and sailors' tales told over too much rum. The scales felt wrong under my fingers, too warm for a cold-blooded creature, pulsing with some internal heat. The claws retracted and extended slightly, even in death, as if controlled by some residual nervous system activity, and carved into the scales along its back, I noticed with growing horror, were symbols. Geometric patterns too precise to be natural, too deliberate to be random scarring. Someone or something had marked this creature. I should have thrown it back. Samuel's warning echoed in my mind, but I didn't. Instead, I covered it with a tarp and pointed my skiff toward home. The journey back through the channel seemed to take forever. The fog had returned, thicker than before, and I could have sworn I heard sounds in the mist, splashing like something large following my boat. Several times I spun around, club in hand, but saw nothing except the churning wake behind me. When I finally reached the village dock, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. A small crowd had gathered. Word spreads fast in a village of 300 souls, and they watched in silence as I secured my boat. "Did you catch anything?" someone called out. I hesitated, my hand on the tarp. Something told me to lie, to say the cove was as empty as everywhere else. But pride, or perhaps fate, made me pull back the covering. The gasps and cries that erupted from the crowd confirmed what I'd already suspected. This wasn't just unusual, this was impossible. Samuel pushed through the crowd, his face pale as moonlight. When he saw the creature, he staggered back as if struck. "Dear God, Marcus," he whispered, "you've caught a Mer-Wraith." "A what?" But before he could answer, the creature's eye, the one I could see, suddenly focused and fixed on something behind me. And in the reflection of that terrible, intelligent eye, I saw something that made my heart stop. More of them were rising from the water. The dock erupted into chaos. People screamed, running for the shore as dark shapes broke the surface of the harbor. But these creatures didn't attack. They simply floated there, perhaps a dozen of them, their clawed hands gripping the barnacled posts of the dock, those impossibly human eyes watching us with that same terrible intelligence. "Nobody move!" Samuel's voice cut through the panic with surprising authority. "Don't run. Don't show fear. And for God's sake, nobody harm them." The crowd froze, caught between terror and confusion. I stood beside my boat, the dead Mer-Wraith at my feet, understanding with horrible clarity that I'd made a catastrophic mistake. One of the creatures in the water pulled itself partially onto the dock. Water sluiced off its scales as it opened its mouth and made that sound again. That awful approximation of speech. This time, others answered, creating a discordant chorus that raised every hair on my body. "They're talking," whispered Marie Chen, the village schoolteacher. "They're actually communicating." Samuel moved slowly toward the edge of the dock, his weathered hands raised in what I hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I'm so sorry. We didn't know any of you remained." To my astonishment, the creature tilted its head as if considering his words. Then it looked at me, at the body in my boat, and made a sound that could only be described as a keening wail. The others joined in, creating a mournful chorus that echoed across the harbor. It was grief. I had killed one of them, and they were mourning. "Samuel," I managed to choke out. "What the hell are these things?" The old man turned to me, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "They're the original inhabitants of this coast, Marcus. The ones who were here long before we built our village, long before humans claimed these shores as our own." "That's impossible. I've studied marine biology. Not marine biology. History, the true history, not the sanitized version we tell ourselves." He gestured to the creatures. "The Mer-Wraiths. The locals called them different names. The finned ones, the deep singers, the claw-bearers. 300 years ago, there were thousands of them along this coastline. They had cities underwater, structures of stone and coral that... Cities, I interrupted. "You're talking about them like they're people." "Because they are people, Marcus, just not human people." Samuel's voice rose with passion. "They had language, culture, art. They traded with our ancestors. There are records, journals hidden in the old church basement describing a time when humans and Mer-Wraiths lived in peace." Another villager, old James Peterson, stepped forward. "My great-grandfather's journal mentioned them. I always thought he'd gone mad in his later years, but..." He stared at the creatures with wide eyes. "He wrote about the slaughter, about how the colonial governor declared them demons, how he ordered them hunted to extinction for their scales, which were said to have medicinal properties. The purge of 1724, Samuel confirmed. 3 months of systematic extermination. They hunted the Mer-Wraiths with harpoons and nets, dragged them from the water, butchered them like animals. The harbour ran black with their blood. According to the records, they killed every last one." "But obviously they didn't," Marie said, her scientific mind already racing. "Some must have survived, fled to deep waters, to places like Dead Man's Cove, where humans feared to go." Samuel nodded. "The cove was sacred to them, a spawning ground, a sanctuary. That's why it was forbidden, not by our laws, but by theirs. They let us fish the rest of the coast, but that one place was to remain untouched. An agreement made. In blood after the purge, I looked down at the creature in my boat, seeing it now with different eyes. Not a monster, not an animal, a person. I had killed a person. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I fell to my knees beside the body, reaching out with a trembling hand to close those accusing eyes. "I didn't know," I whispered. "God help me. I didn't know." One of the Mer-Wraiths in the water made a sharp clicking sound. The others responded, and then, in a movement that was both graceful and eerie, they began pulling themselves onto the dock. Their clawed hands found purchase on the weathered wood as they dragged their bodies forward with surprising speed. People backed away, but Samuel held up a hand. "Let them come! They have every right." The creatures formed a circle around my boat. The largest one, its scales darker, its eyes marked with pale rings that suggested age, approached the body. It reached out with one clawed hand, gently touching the dead Mer-Wraith's face. The keening sound it made was heartbreaking in its raw grief. Then it turned to me. I forced myself to meet its gaze, to not look away from the intelligence and pain I saw there. The creature studied me for a long moment, then did something that shocked everyone present. It extended its hand toward me. The gesture was unmistakable, a hand offered in the universal sign of connection, of peace, or perhaps something else entirely. My mind raced through the possibilities. Was this forgiveness? A demand? For restitution? A threat? Samuel's voice was barely a whisper. "Take it, Marcus. For all our sakes, take its hand." My fingers trembled as I reached out. The moment my skin touched the creature's scaled palm, something extraordinary happened. Images flooded my mind, not words, but pure experience and emotion transmitted directly into my consciousness. I saw the Mer-Wraiths as they had been centuries ago, their underwater cities glowing with bioluminescent beauty. I felt their joy in the hunt, their songs echoing through the depths. I experienced their terror as human ships came, as nets dragged them screaming from their homes. I witnessed the slaughter through their eyes, felt the desperation of the survivors as they fled to the deepest, darkest waters. And I understood. They hadn't abandoned the coast. They had been driven from it, nearly exterminated, clinging to survival in the one place humans feared to tread, until I violated that sanctuary with my ignorance and desperation. The Cirrus connection broke, leaving me gasping. The elder Mer-Wraith withdrew its hand and made a complex series of sounds. Samuel listened intently, his expression growing more troubled with each syllable. "You understand them?" I asked. "Bits and pieces. My grandfather taught me some of their language before he died. He was one of the few who remembered the old agreements." Samuel's face was grave. "They want to speak with the village, all of us. Tomorrow night, under the full moon, at the old pier. What do they want? Samuel met my eyes. Justice, Marcus. They want justice for 300 years of hiding, for the broken treaty, and for the one you killed today. The Mer-Wraiths began retreating to the water, slipping beneath the surface one by one, until only the elder remained. It fixed me with one final piercing stare, then opened its mouth and spoke, not in its own language but in halting, archaic English. Come tomorrow, bring the whole village, we decide together. Then it too vanished beneath the waves, leaving us standing in stunned silence on the dock as the sun set behind the mountains. What had I done? What had I awakened? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my small cottage, the body of the Mer-Wraith wrapped and stored in my shed. We'd decided it would be returned to its people at tomorrow's meeting. Emma slept upstairs, blessedly unaware of the catastrophe her father had triggered. I'd told her only that I'd caught something unusual, that there would be an important village gathering, nothing more. Around midnight, there was a knock at my door. Samuel stood on my porch, along with Marie Chen and Father William from the old church. Their faces were grim. "We've been reading the journals," Samuel said, pushing past me into my small kitchen. "All night, going through the records in the church basement. Marcus, this is worse than we thought." Marie spread several leather-bound books across my table. The pages were yellowed with age, the handwriting archaic and difficult to read. But the illustrations were clear enough, detailed drawings of Mer-Wraiths, anatomical studies, cultural observations, and most disturbingly, diagrams of their systematic extermination. "Governor Harrison Blackwood," Father William said, pointing to a signature on one document. "He orchestrated the purge, but it wasn't just about their scales. Look at this." He opened a journal to a marked page. The entry was dated March 15th, 1724. "The creatures are more intelligent than we credited. They have shown us the location of rich fishing grounds, deep caves filled with pearls, even a vein of gold in the underwater cliffs. But they will not share the deepest secret, the location of the wellspring. They claim it is sacred, that human interference would bring catastrophe. The governor grows impatient. He believes the wellspring is the source of their unnatural longevity and strange abilities. Tomorrow he will make them an ultimatum. Reveal the wellspring's location or face extermination." "The wellspring," I repeated. "What is it?" Samuel flipped to another journal, this one containing a crude map of the coastline. "According to these records, it's somewhere in Dead Man's Cove, an underground source of water that the Mer-Wraiths considered the heart of their world. They believed it gave life to the ocean itself, sustained the fish populations, maintained the balance of the ecosystem. The governor thought it was a fountain of youth," Marie added. "He wanted to claim it for himself, bottle it, sell it to the highest bidders back in Europe. When the Mer-Wraiths refused to reveal its location, he ordered their extermination. But he never found it," Father William said quietly. "The survivors fled, taking the secret with them. Over the centuries, it became legend, then myth, then forgotten entirely. Until now, I thought of the strange clarity of the water in Dead Man's Cove, the abundance of fish, the way the very air seemed different there. You think it's real, this wellspring?" "I think," Samuel said carefully, "that something has sustained an entire species in hiding for 300 years. Something has kept Dead Man's Cove thriving while our fishing grounds died. And I think tomorrow night we're going to learn exactly what that something is." A crash from upstairs made us all jump. I raced up the stairs to find Emma sitting up in bed, her window wide open, curtains billowing in the night breeze. "Honey, what happened?" She pointed outside with a shaking hand. "Daddy, there was someone at my window, something with big eyes and hands with claws. It was looking at me." My blood ran cold. I rushed to the window, scanning the darkness, but saw nothing. Then I noticed the marks on the windowsill, deep gouges in the wood, exactly the width of a Mer-Wraith's claws. They had been watching my house, watching my daughter. Samuel appeared behind me, followed by the others. He examined the marks and cursed softly. "They're keeping track of you, Marcus, making sure you don't flee before the meeting. They wouldn't hurt Emma, would they?" The fear in my voice was naked, undisguised. "I don't know," he admitted. 300 years of hiding, of fear, of remembering the slaughter. Who knows what they've become in that time? They were peaceful once, but trauma changes people. All people. Father William placed a hand on my shoulder. "We need to gather the village. Everyone needs to know the full truth before tomorrow night. They deserve to make an informed choice about how we proceed." "Choice?" I asked bitterly. "What choice do we have? I killed one of them. I violated their sacred place. Whatever they demand tomorrow, we'll have to give them or face the consequences." "Maybe," Marie said thoughtfully, "or maybe this is an opportunity. 300 years of separation, of fear and misunderstanding on both sides. Maybe tomorrow isn't about punishment. Maybe it's about reconciliation." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't forget the intelligence in those eyes, the grief in their keening wails, the deliberate way they'd marked my daughter's window. The Mer-Wraiths were not simple animals acting on instinct. They were people, people with long memories and possibly a thirst for vengeance. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Word spread through the village, and by noon everyone knew the truth about the Mer-Wraiths, the purge, and the upcoming meeting. Reactions varied from fear to fascination to outright denial. Some wanted to arm themselves, to meet the creatures with harpoons and nets. Others, particularly the younger villagers who'd grown up on stories of environmental conservation and interspecies understanding, saw this as a historic opportunity for peace. A town meeting was called for sunset, 2 hours before we were to meet the Mer-Wraiths. The old church was packed, every pew filled, people standing along the walls, the atmosphere thick with tension and fear. Samuel stood at the pulpit, the ancient journals spread before him, and told them everything. When he finished, the silence was deafening. Then everyone tried to speak at once. "We should evacuate," someone shouted. "Leave the village before they attack." "Attack?" countered Marie. "They could have killed Marcus yesterday, but they didn't. They want to talk." "About what? Revenge? Reparations?" James Peterson stood, his face red. "My family has lived here for 8 generations. I'm not leaving my home because of something my ancestors did." "Your ancestors committed genocide," a young woman named Sarah shot back. "Maybe we owe them more than just a conversation." The argument escalated, voices rising, accusations flying. I sat in the back with Emma, watching our community tear itself apart over questions that had no easy answers. Then Father William rang the church bell, the deep toll silencing the crowd. "Enough," he said quietly. "Fighting among ourselves won't help. In 2 hours, we meet them at the pier. I propose we approach with humility, with openness, and with a genuine desire for peace. We listen to what they want. We acknowledge the wrongs of the past, and we try, truly try, to find a path forward that honors both our peoples. And if they want blood," someone called out, "if they want Marcus punished for his kill?" All eyes turned to me. I stood, my legs shaking, but my voice steady. "Then I'll accept whatever punishment they deem fit. I killed one of them out of ignorance, but ignorance is no excuse. If my accountability can prevent further violence, if it can build a bridge between our peoples, then so be it." Emma grabbed my hand, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy, no!" I knelt beside her, cupping her face. "Sweetheart, sometimes doing the right thing is scary, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Your mother taught me that, and I need to be the kind of man, the kind of father, who takes responsibility for his mistakes." Samuel nodded approvingly. "Then it's settled. We go together as a village. We face this together." As the sun began to set, we made our way to the old pier. All 300 residents of Greystone Village, from the eldest to Emma and the other children, walked in solemn procession to the water's edge. The pier was ancient, built from massive timbers that had weathered centuries of storms. It extended 100 feet into the harbour, and at its end we had placed the wrapped, a body of the Mer-Wraith I had killed, surrounded by candles. The full moon rose over the mountains, painting everything in silver light. And from the depths they came. Dozens of them this time, perhaps 100 or more, rising from the water in a synchronized display that was both beautiful and terrifying. They surrounded the pier, their scales gleaming in the moonlight, their clawed hands gripping the posts and pilings. The elder Mer-Wraith pulled itself onto the pier, water streaming from its body. Behind it came others, smaller ones, larger ones, one with scales that had faded to pale grey with age, another with what looked like battle scars crossing its body. They formed a semicircle around us, and the elder moved to the wrapped body. It made a gesture, and 2 younger Mer-Wraiths carefully unwrapped the corpse. The elder examined the body, running its clawed hands over the wounds I had inflicted. Then it turned to face us, and when it spoke, its English was clearer than before, as if it had been practicing. "This was my daughter." The words hit me like a harpoon to the chest. Not just a member of their community, but the elder's child. I had killed someone's daughter. "I am Keeper of Depths," the elder continued. "I am the last who remembers the before time, when humans and Mer-Wraiths lived in balance, when we shared the sea's bounty and kept the old promises." It paused, seeming to gather strength for what came next. "You broke those promises. Your ancestors hunted us like animals, murdered our children, stole our sacred places. We fled to the deepest waters, where even your ship could not follow. For 300 years we have hidden, watching from the depths, as you forgot we ever existed." The elder's eyes found mine. "And now you have come to our last sanctuary, killed my daughter, forced us to emerge once more." I stepped forward, my voice breaking. "I am Marcus Webb, and I am responsible. I didn't know. I—" stopped myself. "No, that's not enough. Whether I knew or not, I killed your daughter. I violated your sacred place. I am guilty, and I accept whatever punishment you deem appropriate." Keeper of Depths tilted its head, studying me. "You offer yourself for judgment?" "I do." "And the rest of your village? They agree to this?" Samuel stepped forward. "We acknowledge the crimes of our ancestors. We acknowledge the breaking of treaties, the destruction of your people. And we acknowledge that Marcus's crime, whatever his intentions, reopened wounds that never healed. We stand with him, for better or worse." A murmur ran through the crowd of Mer-Wraiths, their clicking, hissing language filling the air. Then Keeper of Depths raised one clawed hand for silence. "You offer accountability. This is unexpected. Your ancestors offered only violence." It moved closer to me, and I fought every instinct to back away. "But justice is not simple. My daughter's death cannot be undone. And there is a larger problem." "The wellspring," Samuel said softly. Keeper of Depths' eyes widened slightly. "You know of it?" "We found the old journals. We know your people protected it, that our ancestors tried to steal it." "Not steal, destroy." The elder's voice carried a weight of ancient sorrow. "The wellspring is the heart of the ocean. It feeds the currents that feed the fish. It maintains the balance that keeps the sea alive. Your ancestors wanted to dam it, bottle it, sell it. They did not understand that to take the wellspring is to kill the ocean itself." A chill ran through the crowd. Marie spoke up. "The fishing crisis, the empty nets, is that because—" "The wellspring is dying," Keeper of Depths confirmed. "Your pollution, your warming waters, your overfishing, all of it strains the balance, and we are too few, too weak to maintain it alone. We need It seemed to struggle with the words. We need your help. The revelation hung in the air like the moonlight itself, shimmering, fragile, transformative. You want an alliance, Father William said, wonder in his voice. We want survival for both our peoples. The ocean is dying. If it dies, you die too. You cannot eat from poisoned waters. You cannot drink from lifeless seas. Keeper of Depths looked around at all of us. My daughter's death can have meaning, or it can be just another death. In a long war between our peoples, you choose. The weight of that choice settled over the village like a net. Years of habit told us to fear these creatures, to see them as monsters from the deep. But standing there, hearing the elders speak of survival and cooperation, I saw them for what they truly were, refugees, guardians of something vital, people seeking not revenge, but alliance. What would this alliance require? Samuel asked. And so, under the light of the full moon, on a pier built by our ancestors over waters sacred to theirs, we began to negotiate the terms of a new treaty, one that would change everything about how we understood our relationship with the ocean, with each other, and with the mysterious Mer-Wraiths who had been watching us all along. But as the elder began to explain the true nature of the wellspring and what it would take to save it, I realized that the real challenge wasn't accepting these creatures as allies. It was accepting what they would ask us to become.